Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with Al Arbour, who died recently at the age of 82, one of the great hockey coaches in history. He coached the great New York Islanders team to the 1980s and won 4 consecutive Stanley Cups, 1980 to 83. It's the last time a professional team has won 4 championships in a row, and he also won more games with the Islanders than any hockey coach won with a single team. Here's ESPN on Al Arbour.
One of the NHL's greatest coaches of all time has died. Hall of Famer Al Arbour, the second all-time winningest coach in league history, has passed away. I'm Kerry Chow, joined by ESPN hockey writer Scott Burnside.
I think when you look around the hockey world today and marking Al Arbour's passing, the word that has come up from people who played for him and managed him, and they refer to him as a giant, a legend of the game. And both those are fitting descriptors for one of the greatest coaches of all time. And, of course, a guy that will forever be connected with the New York Islanders, Dusty of the 1980s, 4 straight Stanley Cup victories. And one of the things that is mind-boggling and a record I don't think will ever be approached in hockey again is 19 straight playoff victories during that dynastic run. And, Al Arbour was a man who was, yes, he was a great tactician. Yes, he understood the game. But when you listen to people like Dennis Potvin, Hall of Fame defenseman, talking today about his former coach, it was all about family, and it was about being made to feel special as part of what turned out to be one of the greatest teams of all time. Bill Torrey, the general manager of those great Islanders teams, saying the same thing. Al Arbour treated those players like they were his family. And I think that more than the wins and losses in the Stanley Cup Championships, that's the kind of legacy that will live on when people think about Al Arbour and his impact on the game.
782 career wins. He spent 37 years in the NHL as both a player and a coach.
Obviously, Scotty Bowman, who is the greatest coach of all time. But Al Arbour is close there, and Al Arbour deserves a spot on that Mount Rushmore of the game's greatest coaches. It's not just the wins, it's the impact he had on the game as a whole. He was a lifer. He won a Stanley Cup 4 times as a player. It's remarkable to think of the time that Al Arbour spent connected to the game in his lifetime. The Hall of Fame already, but yes, if you want to talk Mount Rushmore, there's definitely a place for Al Arbour on any mantle that depicts the greatest of the greats when it comes to the NHL, and specifically when it comes to NHL coaching.
Like a lot of great coaches in a lot of sports, he was a journeyman player. Though he did win 4 Stanley Cups with 3 different teams, including the '61 Bobby Hull Stan Mikita Blackhawks. He's the last player in the NHL to wear glasses, and here he is in 1957 with the Red Wings, getting in a fight with Pete Conacher, son of the Maple Leafs Hall of Famer Charlie Conacher.
Arbour rode him off, and it's back toward Deneen. Here's a mix-up with Conacher and Arbour. Here's a fight in front of the net. Take a look. They're hugging each other with the linesman trying to separate them. Arbour is to Conacher, Pete Conacher, son of Charlie, and he certainly knows how to swing. They had quite a little tussle there as the play went down to the other end. Arbour and Pete Conacher were the two. They were left by themselves there, and they really started to go at it. It was right in front of Sawchuk, who just watched. And now this is the aftermath when they go into the penalty box. That's Arbour first, wearing glasses, incidentally, and Conacher, 16. According to the penalty clocks, they say majors for them. 13:48, 5-minute major penalties to Arbour and Pete Conacher for fighting.
We're going to move on to our feature tonight, the iconic Goodyear Blimp, which is being retired at about the age of 90. It's being retired for a semi-rigid dirigible. Most people won't notice the difference, but the new model has a fixed structure holding its big gassy balloon in place, unlike a blimp, which goes flat when the helium is removed. Here's a documentary on the history of the Goodyear Blimp from the Goodyear Company.
America was invincible. The First World War had been won. Business was booming. People were hitting the road in record numbers and driving the success of the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. Headed by a forward-thinking leader, P.W. Litchfield, Goodyear and its employees enjoyed the lion's share of the Roaring '20s. Always an entrepreneur, Litchfield acquired the patents of the German Zeppelin Company, allowing him to secure the technology of early airship design and coaxed the company's chief engineer to join the newly formed Goodyear Zeppelin Company. Dr. Carl Arnstein, who would prove an invaluable player in the Goodyear Blimp legacy, agreed to Litchfield's offer. bringing with him 12 German-born technical experts to continue a process of airship development that had been initiated for World War I efforts. Having a fascination for air travel and a keen sense of promotional prowess, Litchfield found ways to elevate his interests, on the ground as well as in the air. He decided that his company should have a blimp of its own, and so he commissioned the Pilgrim, Goodyear's first promotional blimp. Christened in 1925 by Litchfield's wife Florence, the Pilgrim would begin a crusade of design and display.
The Pilgrim was an important airship because, first of all, it was the first commercial airship to use helium. Secondly, it brought about the idea of mating the car to the bottom of the bag, whereas earlier the bags had to be separately rigged from the cars. It was small enough to be maneuverable, but yet large enough to carry at least 2 passengers. The suspension system and technical innovations, which were patented by Goodyear, are still in use today.
From the very beginning, the Goodyear blimps captured the fancy of the American public, giving them a thrill whenever they were present. In 1928, the Navy approached Litchfield with a need for an aircraft carrier, one that would not be a ship at sea, but a ship in the air. And of course, Goodyear's captain responded. But in order for his company to build the great airships, first, a giant hangar called the air dock must be built in Akron, Ohio. From its groundbreaking on November 4th, 1928, it took over 1 year to construct. The mammoth structure was large enough to accommodate 7 football fields. The excitement of the air dock construction was a fitting backdrop as Goodyear produced 4 additional public relations blimps: the Puritan, the Vigilant, the Mayflower, and the Volunteer, all named for winners of the America's Cup, were christened, as Litchfield continued to hold tight his dream of airships sailing the skies as yachts sailed the seas. In 1929, Amelia Earhart christened the Defender, Goodyear's flagship of the fleet. Largest of the public relations blimps of the day, the Defender could reach a top speed of 62 miles per hour. It was the first of Goodyear's blimps to bear a night sign, a neon Goodyear that would later be dubbed the Neonograph and equipped on other Goodyear craft. According to a company spokesperson of the day, the primary mission of the Goodyear blimp fleet was to make the American public airship conscious.
While the airplane had become by then a common sight, the only lighter-than-air craft were the Army and Navy airships, rarely seen by the public and then at a distance. The Goodyear blimps could come down out of the sky and mix with the people of America.
From 1925 to 1941, sometimes flying several in formation, the Goodyear blimp fleet made over 150,000 flights and traveled over 4 million miles, just for the fun of it. In the meantime, Goodyear, the name emblazoned on the monumental air dock, was building 2 of the world's largest airships, aimed for war instead of wonder. Thousands watched as Goodyear put together the pieces and the power of a flying giant, watching as the skeleton began to take form, from the main frame of this rigid airship through the intricate lattice work of the duralumin girders, giving the lady her not-so-dainty shape. Hundreds of men coming from surrounding states were needed in the air dock, working above, below, and inside the structure.
Everybody from miles around is coming to see the Navy's giant Zep. There's standing room only inside as the crowd gazes on the Silver Sky battleship.
48 pigeons, 1 for each state in the Union, guide the way out of the air dock as the USS Akron, the mightiest craft of its time, is unveiled on August 8, 1931. Designed to hold over 6.5 million cubic feet of helium, 30 times greater than that of today's blimps, the Akron was able to carry up to 91 passengers and crew members and contain sleeping quarters, a mess hall, galley, and restrooms.
What a thrilling picture the great ship makes as she floats majestically through space. It's a sight no one will ever forget. Long may she cruise as a symbol of America's air power.
But the Navy would have to look to other resources as the Akron would take her final flight on April 3, 1933.
While attempting to probe some thunderstorms and demonstrate the capabilities of the airship, while Admiral Moffett was aboard, it was lost in a line squall.
The country mourned the loss of its beloved Akron. During the remainder of the 1930s, blimps were used in active duty. It was good preparation for the call to action addressed a few years later. As the word of war sounded, all branches of the military began to build up their arsenals of personnel and equipment. Goodyear Public Relations blimps would serve as the prototypes for the naval blimp fleet used in World War II, as they were placed in military service, repainted, and used as blimp trainers for new pilots. As the war continued, more lighter-than-aircraft were ordered by the military, and Goodyear delivered building the Navy's blimp fleet at a frenzied rate. Most of the vessels were used as submarine spotters, patrolling the east and west coasts, their mere presence enough to keep the enemy at bay. Their charge was to be the search half of the war's search and destroy missions, alerting our coastal defenses when enemy subs were spotted from the sky. Throughout World War II, Goodyear provided over 150 blimps and over 1,000 tethered barrage and free-flying training balloons for Uncle Sam as well as the Allies. After the war, Goodyear took steps to resume its public relations fleet operations, buying back the components of 7 ships from the War Assets Administration. These blimps were used to trail banners for various events and for a short time were chartered to various companies like Canada Dry and Mobil Oil. However, this duty was short-lived, as the emphasis for the Goodyear blimps returned to only promoting the company's name and products. In 1947, Goodyear developed a 10-panel incandescent night sign to replace the neonogram, and flashing the message, Goodyear means good wear. The 1960s saw more ships added to the Goodyear promotional fleet like the Columbia.
The first network television, I believe, was in '63, the Orange Bowl, done by a CBS producer called Frank Cherkinian, and it's really taken off since there.
Since 1963, Goodyear has covered over 2,500 live network televised events.
There was this great overall picture of an event. No one had ever seen the Rose Bowl with 106,000 people. No one had ever seen the Orange Bowl.
Using Goodyear's state-of-the-art gyrocam, Goodyear blimps cover about 120 events a year. Over the years, Goodyear has trained over 100 pilots and countless other associates as each blimp in the fleet travels with 4 pilots, assisted by riggers, engine mechanics, electronic technicians, ground handlers, and a public relations manager. But with its frantic schedule and even more frantic fanfare, the Goodyear blimps have little reason for rest. 60% of their time is spent on television coverage and another 10% on travel. Their remaining hours are filled trying to accommodate the many requests for special appearances. Even though Goodyear's public relations service through night messaging was established years ago, it was the Sky-tacular, Goodyear's right-to-left night messaging system installed on the Mayflower in 1966 that really lit the public's interest. With each side of the ship carrying over 1,500 lights, the Sky-tacular could flash messages and animation in red, yellow, green, and blue. The Columbia could carry the Super Sky-tacular, named for having twice as many lights and 3 times the amount of wiring. On a more serious mission in August 1992, the Goodyear Stars and Stripes used its Super Sky-tacular brilliance to be a sign of hope to South Central Florida.
Hurricane Andrew hit Florida, and we put out a night sign with Creole for the Haitian people, Spanish and a Cuban message, English on there, and we flew it all around the area, what they needed to do in terms of preventing typhus, where you could get help.
Survivors were directed to water, food, and shelter. Since put into public relations service, Goodyear has had nearly 40 blimps in their public relations fleet. Blimps, classified as non-rigid, because of their lack of internal girders to give shape to the inflated bag of gas. Blimps that appear to be made of steel, yet are spun of polyester and are lighter than air. Blimps that fly a dozen years of service and create a lifetime of memories. Blimps worth an estimated $5 million each that will never be put up for sale. Claiming this century through service, frolic, and certainly their grace, Goodyear blimps have accomplished what few have only dreamt. They have given us a thrill. They have left us with hope that this familiar friendly icon floating faithfully above our towns will forever set sail in our imaginations and inspire our spirit of adventure.
And my favorite Goodyear blimp moment is that crazy Bruce Dern in the John Frankenheimer movie Black Sunday flying a Goodyear blimp over the Super Bowl filled with shrapnel he's going to unleash on the crowd. I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius Sid Tepps. I'm going to close tonight with Melody Patterson. She died at the age of 66. She only had one important role, but it was a great one. She was Wrangler Jane on F Troop opposite Ken Berry. Here she is with Ken Berry and Paul Lynde, a Mountie who always gets his man.
Hi, Wilton.
Hi, Jane. Sergeant Ramsden, I'd like you to meet Wrangler Jane. This is Sergeant Ramsden of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. We always get our man.
I dream of Wrangler with the light yellow hair.
Bye, Wilton.
He's also married to James MacArthur for a while. We've done his podcast. And what else can we close with tonight but the theme from F Troop?
When drilling and findings get them down, they know their morale can't droop. As long as they all relax in town before they resume with a bang and a boom.